In Chapter 9, we will be learning about auxiliary views. Many designs have features located on inclined surfaces that are not parallel to regular planes of projection. For example, this V-block here has this inclined surface kicked back at 30 degrees. To truly describe the feature, the true shape of the feature must be shown in an auxiliary view. This here is the auxiliary view for this V-block. And an auxiliary view has line of sight that is perpendicular to the inclined surface. This means that their surface right here has been projected to this view and then rotated towards us at 30 degrees. This gives us the true shape of this portion of the block, which allows us to dimension it. Unlike the bottom of this block, which has been kicked towards us at 30 degrees, cannot be dimensioned because it's no longer its true shape. So this auxiliary view is not much different than drawing your normal multi-view. It just has lines that are projected at a particular angle off a reference geometry. So I'm going to start off with a new drawing, open my template, and we're going to use our construction layer, make sure it's visible. We're going to make a construction rectangle. We're going to start off at an arbitrary location, and we're going to give it dimensions. So we'll put a D on the keyboard and start off with a 3 spacebar, 2.25 spacebar. Then I'm going to left click to place the rectangle. Now we now want to copy a rectangle that is shifted up 0.75. So I'm going to select this rectangle. I'm going to right click in the graphics area and choose copy selection. I'm going to left click that, choose a base point, and we want to offset it with relative coordinates of 0, 0.75 spacebar. Press the escape key to exit the command. Now I want to rotate this top block down 30 degrees. So I'm going to choose this rectangle, I'm going to right click in the graphics window, and left click rotate. I'm now going to choose a pivot point, which I'm going to use as this intersection between this rectangle and this rectangle at the lower right hand corner. And I'm going to input an angle of 30 degrees. Enter. I'm now going to draw a rectangle above it, which is going to represent the top view. So I'm going to choose the rectangle command, and I'm going to use object tracking, which is by bringing my cursor over this corner right here, it's going to render a dashed line that I can use to reference perpendicular from this point right here. Using the dynamic input window, I can roughly estimate 1.5 inches away from that. I'm now going to enter D on the keyboard so I can give this rectangle dimensions of 3 spacebar, 2 spacebar. Left click to end the command. I'm now going to draw some offset lines in this rectangle. However, to do that, I need to explode the rectangle. So I'm going to choose the explode command, and then choose the rectangle and right click. Now these lines are individual. So now I'm going to choose the offset distance of 0.2 spacebar, choose the top line and then the center of the rectangle, and then the bottom line and the center of the rectangle. There's 2 lines. And choose the spacebar to end the command and spacebar to re-enter the command. And I want to go a distance this time of 0.75 spacebar, and then choose the top line and the center of the rectangle and the bottom line and the center of the rectangle. Now we have our 2 offset lines. Choose the spacebar to end the command. And now I want to start filling in some geometry down here with actual object lines. So I'm going to switch to our object layer and go to our line command. I'm going to start with this lower left-hand corner point, and I'm going to kind of reference the drawing in the book. That way I choose the correct shape or the correct points that I've drawn in the construction lines. And this last point down here needs to be perpendicular to that back line or the intersection point on this vertical line. And then I'm going to close the geometry. Now I want to draw my construction box for my auxiliary view. So I'm going to switch back to my construction line, and I'm going to start off by selecting this upper rectangle. I'm going to right-click in the construction area and choose Copy Selection. I'm going to choose a base point, and I'm going to use object tracking to also base it off that point. And I'm going to be approximately 2 inches away. Press the Escape key on the keyboard to exit. I'm going to select this box. I'm going to right-click in the graphics area and choose Rotate. Pick a pivot point. I want to rotate it down 60 degrees, which would line it up parallel with this top line. So to do that, that would be a -60 according to the coordinate system with AutoCAD. Now what I want to do is represent the V that goes in this auxiliary view right here. To do that, I'm going to switch to my object layer, choose Line Command. I'm going to pick a point right here and a point off that offset line I drew earlier. Exit the command with the space bar. I'm going to choose my object line, right-click and choose Rotate, pick the pivot point, and enter an angle of 45 degrees. I'm going to repeat that with the space bar. I'm going to repeat the line command, that is, and choose the point on the front view here, and then choose the other offset line I drew, and that with the space bar. I'm going to choose that line one more time, and right-click in the graphics window and choose Rotate. Now I'm going to choose a pivot point, which is the intersection of this offset line and the outside of the rectangle. And I want to have this back at 45 degrees as well. However, I have to go past 90 and then 45, which would actually be 135 degrees. Now we're going to trim this using the Trim tool in the Modify toolbar. And choose the lines I want to trim. Right-click and then choose the extents that I want to trim. Right-click to end the command. Now I'm going to draw a construction line. I want to make sure I'm on the construction layer. It's going to be based off this point right here and then perpendicular to this surface. I'm going to exit the command with the space bar and then switch to my hidden line. Choose the line command and choose this intersection point, which it's really close to that center point, so it's kind of hard to snap to. So I might have to zoom in to actually snap to it. I'm just zooming in and out with the middle wheel on the mouse, and then to this point. The next thing I want to do is make some construction lines based off this point and this point. So I'm going to switch back to my construction layer and open up the construction tool. I want to make vertical lines, so I'm going to put a V and space bar. I'm going to choose this point and this point. Now I'm going to start filling in some geometry up here with the the object layer. However, I want to make one more construction line that is through the center of this. Notice I just snap with the triangular, which is the midpoint of this line, which would be the center. So I'm going to switch to my object layer, choose the line command, and I'm going to start filling in the lines here. Basically, I'm just going to start connecting the dots. So I'm going to choose this point, and then this point here, and then the same on the other side. And then I'm going to press the space bar to exit. And before we go on, I want to make sure that my polar tracking is on. So I'm going to select it, make sure it's blue, and then I'm going to right-click on top of it and go to Settings. And I want to add some additional angles I want to snap to. So I'm going to click New, and enter an angle of 120 degrees, and then press OK. So I'm going to start up here and go to the line command, and I want to choose this point, and then you'll notice how it actually just kind of naturally snaps to that 120 degree angle right here. You might have to zoom in a little more to actually get to snap to it. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom, across, And then I'm going to exit the command with the spacebar and re-enter it, and do the same thing down here. Again, we want it to be at that 120-degree angle, which might be hard at this zoomed out view, so I'm going to zoom in some more. And then let it snap at 120, and then fill it in the command with the spacebar, and then re-enter it, and then fill in a few spots. Spacebar, spacebar, spacebar. And again, every time I press spacebar, I'm entering and re-entering the command. So now we have the top view drawn. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to our construction layer, and I want to make a construction line vertically that's about this point right here, which is really close to this point, so you got to zoom in to find it. Choose the spacebar to exit the command. And now I want to make some lines that are perpendicular to this surface but intersect this vertical line I just drew, and some other pieces of geometry. So I'm going to go to the construction line command, choose that point where it intersects here, and then snap perpendicular to here. I'm going to do the same thing with this point, and then again this point down here. Make sure it's the outside line, not the inside line. I'm also going to start filling in some object lines. For example, this line right here that we just drew in the vertical direction. Oh, snap to the wrong side, so I'll Control Z to undo that and snap to the right line. Now I'm going to start drawing the geometry that's on this portion of the block. So I'm going to the line command, and I'm going to choose this lower line because that's the one that we snapped over here from this vertical line. So I'm going to choose that line, go down to the bottom here, and then I'm going to exit that. Then I'm going to go from this point to this point, and exit with the spacebar. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here, that point to this point to this point. I need to add one more construction line here, so I'm going to go back to my construction layer, go to my construction tool. I want this bottom point right here is perpendicular to this surface. Now I'm going to go back to my object line layer, open the line command, and I'm going to fill in the rest of this. To here, to back up here. I'm going to fill in these two lines. And then I need to do the top portion here. And that is your auxiliary view. Notice how this surface now is much bigger than this surface, which is actually larger down here. So we've actually rotated it up towards us at 30 degrees, the surface. So one more line I have to draw, I just noticed on this top view, and that shows the bottom of this V block. Press the escape button. Now I'm going to turn off my construction line layer, and I'm going to now dimension it. So I'm going to switch to my dimension layer, choose the linear dimension, and I'm going to choose this base corner in the top, bring it out here, and I'm going to choose this base point here and this base point. Choose this point and this point. I'm going to choose this point and this point. Again, it's really important not to over-dimension your drawing, but just give the right amount of dimensions that you can reference to get your dimension you want out of it. So I believe that's it for all your linear dimensions. Now we're going to switch to angle dimensions, which would be these top 2 points. Now I'm going to choose the angular command. I'm going to angle right here, our 30 degrees back, here, 30 degrees here. Make sure you draw the angle in the right direction, that way you can reference the right angle, and the 90 degrees here. And there you have it, your first auxiliary view.